I'm here to talk about Squid Game Season 2, and the general takeaway from me is that it is fantastic. I would give this probably a 4 out of 5 stars if I were to have to assign it anything. Get ready, look, boom, 4 out of 5. Overall, the season starts out quite strongly. I think the first episode is one of the best of the season. Then the next few episodes before the games actually start are quite serviceable, and then once the games have actually started, I think the show is fantastic. That's kind of a very high level overview of what I think about the season as a whole. Now, speaking of the games specifically, I think the 2 new games that are added are basically amazing. The first one is one where you split into teams of 5. It's the background image here, where each particular person is going to do a particular activity, and you start at a particular starting point in a race course, and you go around, and you only have 5 minutes in total to complete this racetrack, where at each stage someone is doing a particular task. This is incredibly engaging. It's entertaining. It's fun. You get a bunch of new dynamics because you have a bunch of people grouped up for the first time in interesting ways. There's just so many great moments in this. Like, for instance, when the team that is, I guess, in this picture here, the main team that we follow for the first time in this, when they pass and they actually complete the challenge, and literally everyone is cheering, like even the front man who's like the villain, I guess, of this story so far, at least. Even he's cheering, and it's like, man, this is like overcoming the entire crowd with joy, and they were so engaged in this, just like me as the audience. And this is like a highlight of the show. It was so good. But yeah, then the episode basically continues. You have like this amazing scene, and the credits show up, and it's like, oh my god, the music's like crescendoing at the right moments, and this is basically really fantastic. And yeah, then it continues with like a montage, and you're seeing like all the other teams do their own different attempts, and some are passing, some are failing. You see the different strategies that are used. You see like a bunch of different interesting mashups, like I said, like of different teammates and stuff. It's just a lot of fun. It's a brilliant choice for, I guess, a new game that is very fun. Yeah, for every reason that I just said, I suppose. Then there's the second game, which I think is like equally good. Honestly, it's probably even better. Like, I enjoyed this even more. But it's a game where you're basically, all the contestants are on a merry-go-round, or standing on a platform that is basically spinning around. And they don't know how long they're going to be spinning for, but at some point, it's going to stop. And as soon as the spinning stops, the announcer announces a number. And then when you hear the number, you need to form groups of that number and then run to the nearest room. And there's not necessarily always going to be enough rooms, and there's not always necessarily going to be I don't think there's always necessarily going to be an even number of people or whatever, so you could run into issues in that regard. But basically, you need to, like, if they announce 2, you need to pair up in pairs of 2. If they announce 5, you need to group into pairs of 5. If they announce 17, you need to group up in pairs of 17. But you get the point. This is stressful, engaging, and I guess, again, entertaining. And it just provides so much potential, and it like pays off on that potential for like interesting dynamics between people. Like a lot of, like, for instance, the layout of this season is that initially you start with the previous game that I said, which is that you have like groups of 5 that are teaming up, and now you put them in a situation where the announcer might announce like teams of 3, and then you need to split off that team of 5. And like, what if it's like, I think at some point they say like 4, and it's like the teams of 5 have to get rid of one person. How do you choose who that one person's going to be? And what is the consequences of, like, what if you kick off that one person and now they become your enemy because like you all teamed up against this person and now they hate you, and then in a future challenge they're gonna like go against you and try and eliminate you or something. And it's like, this is good stuff, basically. But yeah, so I have a few examples here. So for instance, there's an amazing part where you have this team of 5, particularly in this picture here, and they all choose to abandon the psychic lady, or I suppose she's psychic, I don't know what, like the shaman lady. It's fantastic, and it's like, we agree as the audience, but like, this lady's a bit out of place, let's kick her out, and then they do kick her out. And then obviously there's consequences where now this lady's gonna hate them going forward, and so on and so forth. But that was amazing. You have a moment where you have Thanos' group. I guess I'm going to talk about the characters a bit later, but you have Thanos' group, and you have there's like a girl in that group, and there's like a guy who's being bullied in that group, and he like sides against the girl in that situation. It's like, man, okay, this is like, oh my god, drama, crazy. This like girl was looking out for him, but now the bullied guy is like breaking up and taking the side of his bullies than the girl. And it's like, man, this is really cool. Thanos like kicking the one guy out of his team was amazing. It's like, you out, and he like kicks him. Like, man, this is so great. The mother and the son have drama where they're like breaking up, and like it's partially the son's fault, and he's like extremely apologetic, and they have like a reunion, and in that reunion he's like crying so much, or like, I think he was crying, and I was probably crying honestly when I was watching it. But it's just such good drama. You have the moment where you think the mother's not going to make it, and then like 4, 5, 6, and I think the front men come and save her, and it's like, man, oh my god, I was on the edge of my seat. I thought she was actually going to die, because in this show people actually do die sometimes. So it's like you're really on the edge of your seat when you're watching something like this, which is great. And then of course there's the final bit of this particular challenge where it's like they do announce the number 2, so now everyone is pairing up, and they only have like 50 rooms or something, and there's like more than 100 people, so it's going to definitely eliminate some people, and you have to get to the room first. And it's just, there's like this cool slow-mo shot where like everyone is running toward the room and you're seeing all the characters that you know because they're set up so well, and you see all these different characters all running and you're like, oh no, some of these people aren't going to make it. But I think they do mostly end up making it. And the end, the revelation at the end is that, oh my god, we entered a room, like two of our favorite characters, you know, the front man and the 456's best friend. And there's a guy there and it's like, what do we do? I guess we're going to kill him is what the front man decides. And it's all engaging stuff. I love it. The drama, the suspense, it's fantastic. Great new games, basically. The second overall point is that the characters are basically really good this season. That was obviously one of the big standouts last season. It's like, oh my god, we have all these amazing characters, and now we have even, I wouldn't say even better, I'd say just as good this season basically too. So I have like a list of them that I like here. We have the recruiter guy in season 1. I think there is like some name for him, or at least some fan name that people call him. I don't remember what it is, but the guy that's going around and like recruiting people into the game. He is fantastic. You have, obviously, you know, the standout of this season is by far Thanos. For multiple regards, I guess. Like, he has the memorable name, you know, which is obviously why we're going to remember him as like the, you know, the big MCU fans that we are. He has like the hair. He's got like bright purple hair, I think it is. He's got the attitude, you know, he's obviously the kind of the bully character in this, but he's also like a lovable kind of bully where it's like he's kind of he's definitely a drug addict, so he's kind of high all the time, and it's like he's not necessarily being a bad person because he wants to like be mean to people or anything, but it's just like the byproduct of what he does is kind of that. It's like, oh, this is kind of interesting. I like this guy. He's like he's unambiguously a villainous character, like portrayed, or an antagonist in this, but it's like he's also kind of lovable, which is really interesting. Obviously, he uses English as well, like he has broken English phrases sometimes, or sometimes not really broken, but just like English phrases, and it's really great. Thanos is basically fantastic. I think I loved him immediately from when he did the heel click thing and the red light, green light scene, and it's just a lot of fun, and Thanos is great. Who else is there? There's also the trans girl. I don't remember what her name is or number or anything like that, but she's great. She's like sympathetic. She's like no bullshit. She's very capable, obviously. We find out at the end that she's the most capable soldier, I guess, in this, like the most capable person to get them out of this situation. She is fantastic, basically. It's a great new character addition. Then there's also Young Ill, who apparently is the front man, and I didn't realize this until like episode 6 or something, like right until the end, which I feel really dumb for, because I even thought, for a second there, I was like, man, is that the front man? And I looked it up, and I looked up the appearance of the front man last season. I'm like, man, you know what, this doesn't look anything like him. It must be a different actor, it must be a completely different character. So I basically watched the majority of the season without realizing that was the front man, which is, I guess, if you have seen the show, you probably realize how insane that is and how much I had to reframe my perspective when I was going through it. The whole time I thought he was like a mole or something, and purely because of his name of Young Ill, I was like, oh, hey, it wasn't Ill Numb. He was the villain guy last season, or the mole guy. Maybe this guy's also a mole, or maybe he's like Young Ill because it's like the young version of the owner of the games or whatever from last season. But maybe that's just like a Korean name. It doesn't actually mean young or anything like that. But yeah, I was bamboozled basically, far longer than the show wanted me to be. So that was a bit weird, but he's a great character. He's clearly sabotaging them at many points, but there is that one moment in episode 5 where he is clearly, truly enjoying the fact that the team made it, just like everyone else around them, and the exciting energy is getting to both the audience and to him, and it's great. But he's very interesting. There's also I really like I don't know any of their names, that's the issue, but 456's Marine friend, like his best friend basically, and that guy's like other Marine guy, like who's like good at the women's game basically, the spinning, what do you call it, like the cool game where they like do the dice and not the dice, but the things, and it's like, oh my god, you know exactly what I'm talking about if you've seen the show. It's great. He's great as well. Obviously a coward at the end, which is really interesting. And who else is there? There's also, I looked at my notes here. You have the girl who was on Thanos' team, who I said was like trying to help out the bullied guy. She's really interesting because she's like lying about her age, and she's smarter than she lets on, and she's actually looking out for someone. So she's like a decently good person, which is kind of interesting in this group of people who aren't necessarily like that. But there's also, I guess, in this team, there's the guy who's actually being bullied himself, which is also interesting because he is unambiguously like a coward, which is something you don't typically see. Usually you would see like, oh my god, he starts off as a coward and he like grows to become like something greater, and he actually sides with the girl or anything and everything. But no, in the end, he stays true. He's a coward. The girl dies because he was cowardly, and it's interesting. I do like this guy. He's kind of a hateable, cowardly character, which is interesting. Is there anyone else? Let's see. Oh, and this is like the most minor of characters. It doesn't really do much, but there's an old man in this who like yells like very passionately, and I like his yelling voice. Okay, he's an interesting. I wouldn't say he's necessarily interesting, but he's a fun character to watch. I always loved whenever he would give his impassioned speeches with his like booming old man theater actor voice. It was fantastic, so I like him too. But basically, amazing. The new games are amazing this season, which are probably the biggest appeal of this, are just seeing the new games. The first episode was fantastic, and the characters are fantastic. So overall, this was basically a very fantastic season. Now, there is one major drawback, which is that this season ends on a complete cliffhanger. It is not a complete story. Season 1, I would say, is a pretty complete story. You could watch season 1 and be done with it. That's it. Season 2 is not. It is very clearly, you end on a cliffhanger, ends midway through like the the climax of this. Like, you don't really have any sort of resolution. If for some reason you were watching this review and you have not seen Squid Game Season 2, just wait for Season 3 to finish. It's going to be so much more interesting to have a complete story. But it was frustrating. I got to the end and I'm like, man, I got to wait like another 6 months or whatever to watch the rest of it. It sucks. But anyway, that's, believe it or not, those are all my overall thoughts. Now, I do have some minor criticisms, okay? It's not perfect. And I have 3 things. The first one is probably the biggest one, which is, I think, the motivation of 456. I wish I knew his name. I don't know any of these character names, okay? But I guess besides Thanos, because it's like a memorable name. Anyway, 456 is a bit of an issue in this because he had a plan going into the new games, which is, okay, we got a GPS. We're going to be able to find this place. We're going to bring the police here. We're going to shut down this operation. Whatever, makes sense. Then the GPS is like stolen from him, and it seems that he just has no plan now. All he does is like he doesn't really do anything. He just keeps participating in the games. He like helps a little bit. Like, he definitely helps in the red light, green light. But after that, it's like he's really only out there to help his team, and he doesn't really do much to help them even. And like, he doesn't, I don't know. He just doesn't do much. But like, it seems like after the GPS was taken out, he has no plan. He has no advantage. It's just like, he's not really trying to undermine the games as much as he probably could. He doesn't even like, he doesn't share that much info. Like, he should probably just, maybe he does this off screen and we just don't see, but he should probably explain the entirety of his experience to like everyone there, but he just doesn't. And like, he lets other people, like a lot of people just basically die before he decides to take action. Like, basically the end of the season is when he takes action in like the last episode, but so many people die before that point. It's like, man, why didn't you just do this a bit sooner? I don't know. It's a little bit frustrating in that regard. And I guess also the final kind of, not really a character thing issue with him, but like the final fight of this season kind of feels like it's very underwhelming of like a final taking arms, because it's like, okay, we're waiting. Well, how are we gonna undermine the system? What's gonna happen? And how, like, what's our smart approach to do this? And it turns out it's just to like steal the bad guys' guns and then like kind of shoot at them. And it's like, oh, okay, this is like quite bland, but I guess we'll see where season 3 goes. But yeah, that's my main minor criticism. Believe it or not, it is pretty minor. I enjoyed the season thoroughly regardless of that. There are two other very minor things, which is one, I had no real interest in the storyline with the police officer guy and him like trying to find the island. Every time they would cut away, I was like, okay, can we just like not watch this right now? I just go back to the games. I want to watch the games. The games are fun. But it was perfectly fine. It was just a little bit boring. And also the premise of like the plan of trying to undermine the system is a little bit, it's either like the characters are meant to be written to be dumb, or the writers, I guess, are not very, I don't know if they are very dumb or something. I don't know. Basically, for some reason, every like character, or I guess not every character, 456 is basically convinced for some reason that taking out the front man would stop this operation, or like taking out the front man is going to perform some meaningful change to like what's going on here. And I don't think there is any strong reason, unless I am forgetting it, which is very possible, so you can correct me in the comments if you're still listening at this point. I don't think there is any strong reason to believe that the front man is in charge of like the operations. I mean, okay, wait, that's a really dumb thing to say. Obviously he's in charge of the day-to-day operations, right? But it basically, if you wipe out the front man, I don't think Squid Games are ending. I think that he is just gonna like be replaced, basically. I don't think he's irreplaceable. I don't think there's anything to indicate that. Like, I don't know. Even his name, the front man, like he's just the front, right? There's going to be a backhand that is or a back man who's going to be like, you know, controlling everything behind the scenes, or a bunch of investors who are going to be interested in like continuing the operations after this solo front man is gone. Like, to me, it seems a bit silly to think that he is the sole person responsible, but I guess we'll see. Maybe he is, and maybe that will be an interesting convenience that will annoy me later on. But right now, it just seems a bit dumb. But anyway. Now I have a few miscellaneous notes. We have, let's see, the show does character building very well. So I think I've already touched on this. Like, it's not necessarily that there's a lot of depth to the characters, but there is a very large cast of characters in this, and each of them have at least like one little thing that is like memorable about them. And I kind of respect that. Like, it's really cool. Another thing is the overacting. There is a bunch of overacting in this. Like, for instance, the go-to example is probably the mother and the son duo, who are always like, I don't know how to explain why I think it's overacting, but it's like the mother's expressions are so exaggerated, and the guy is like always like whimpering and like doing like hand motions and stuff, and it's like really overacted, and it's really great. I love it so much. What else is there? Oh, another interesting like miscellaneous thing to me is that they aged up the timeline to be in 2024 now, which I guess makes sense logically in the story why like it takes a while to find the next Squid Games and like identify what the recruiter is doing and all that. But it's such a weird meta thing to me that so many stories do this. Like my two examples are this, and then the MCU did this as well, where it's like constantly like I think in Infinity War they pushed it up to 20 whatever year the Infinity War came out. I don't know what that is, 2019 or something. And it's like, why do stories do this? Like, you don't need to be in the modern day, right? Like, the Squid Game season 2, I don't think benefits from being in 2024, but it just happens to be. And it's like a weird meta, like, I don't know, but it is what it is. Anyway, Now I have a few random other miscellaneous things from episode 1 specifically. I said, I like basically the episode 1 has like this big montage where they're like trying to find the recruiter. And I think it's really great because it makes it feel truly difficult to find like the island and to find the recruiter. And it's like, okay, this is good. Like the Squid Game people are actually competent. And it makes it feel like the protagonist is struggling to find them. So I like that. What else is there? The first episode was also great because you get to like just follow the recruiter guy throughout his day. Like it's basically a slice of life where you're following him and seeing what he does. And he goes to these homeless people and gives them food. And it's like, oh, what an interesting life this guy lives. So I like that. There was the really cool guy who was like making people into debt or taking people into debt. But then like in the end, he like sacrificed himself for his friend who he like officiated his wedding and stuff. And I'm like, oh man, this is a great guy right here. What else is there? More generally, I guess we follow one of the characters who are the guards or one of the guards, I guess, in the Squid Game games. And I feel like I almost certainly missed her motivation because I don't quite understand what she wants. I think from memory, there was something about she had a kid in North Korea and I think the kid died or something. I don't remember, basically. I think I might have missed that, but that was a bit of an interesting thing, I guess. The guy on the boat being a mole was also a good twist, I think, because it does explain how like the police officer guy was able to get off the island last time without the Squid Game, all-powerful Squid Game entity, finding out. So that was really cool. There was also a nightmare scene, which I actually think I got spoiled on TikTok before I watched this, potentially, but where he thinks that one of the games is going to be like the game where you like get the sugar thing and you need to like carve it out. And he tells everyone, okay, guys, we need to get the triangle. And then he has like a nightmare the day before where it's like the triangle is not just the triangle, but it's like a fractal triangle where the triangles have triangles in themselves. And it's like impossible to do it. And he's like freaking out because he told everyone that you got to choose the triangle. Now all the people who chose the triangle like mad at him. And it's like, this is so relatable because like I feel like I've had dreams like this too where I tell everyone something's gonna happen and it doesn't happen. It's like, oh my god, what have I done? I've led all these people down the wrong path. I feel like 456 in this moment, but that was very fun. And I guess finally, I also talked about this a little bit, but my final note is that they really made the coward bullied guy, like who was with the girl and Thanos' group and all that, they really made him very hateable, and I really like that. The fact that he lets the girl die in the end and it's like a cowardly action and he like doesn't change or improve or anything is really interesting. So I like that a lot about this season. But that's Squid Game season 2. I guess my final thing to reiterate if you're listening this far, just wait till season 3 is out. There's no need to watch this. Like it's fantastic. I would give it a 4 out of 5. It's one of the best things I've seen all year. I guess it hasn't been that long, but all year. But I wish I just waited for all of it to be out at once so I could just binge it all. But yeah, that's Squid Game season 2.